Okay, back to the dinim of Mezuzah. Now, we were learning that in order to be obligated in a Mezuzah, you need to have a door frame. Now, if there's a door, then according to all opinions, you need a Mezuzah, and then you make a bracha. If there's no door, it's just a doorway, so you put it on without a bracha. But what happens if you have a gate, like this moving gate over here, that has two sides, but there's no lintel on top? It's called a mashkif in Hebrew. The doorposts are called mezuzahs, or mezuzah singular, and the top lintel is called the mashkif. A doorway that doesn't have a mashkif doesn't need a mezuzah. So let's say you have a gate in your house, front, back, wherever, and there's no top to it, so it doesn't need a mezuzah. Just if there's, again, a door frame with all those different things. Okay. Another thing is like this. Okay, a place that's not respectable, like bathhouse, mikvah, tannery, bathroom, all that, you don't need a mezuzah. Why? Because it's not a deal of coverage. It's not a respectable room. Because, people are undressed, people are naked. So therefore, all those places, that means the actual room of the bathroom doesn't need a mezuzah. The actual room of the doorway to the mikvah, things like that doesn't need a mezuzah.
But mikvah is a holy place?
It's a holy place, but because people are standing there not dressed, so there it's not a respectable place, and therefore you're not supposed to put up a mezuzah.
How about the roof and the column? Like here, the column goes up there, and the roof is there, and the column here.
We didn't put up all the mezuzahs, but there will be a mezuzah going up here.
It should be there, no?
It's going to be, because there is a door. There will be. We didn't put up the mezuzahs yet.
Otherwise, roof and column.
Then you need.
Or the roof and walls.
Yeah, then you need. Yeah.
But here is a bush.
Okay, I'm saying it's a shul, it's a different story, but we said that today's shuls do need a mezuzah because people eat and sleep in them. Eat, sleep, Okay. Okay. Another interesting thing. If you have horizontal doors, like we said, if you see this, not so much in LA, but in New York, in front of the stores, you have these doors that open up to the cellar. So they open up this way, they're laying flat in the ground, and then you open them up. So even though they're mamish doorways, they're mamish a door, and you walk through them to go downstairs, but the din is, it has to be a vertical door to be obligated in a mezuzah. If it's horizontal door, meaning it's laying this way, it doesn't need a mezuzah. If it's diagonal, then you would put without a bracha. But if it's laying flat, you definitely don't need. If it's upright, you have to put it with a bracha. But if it's diagonal, then you put without a bracha. By the way, what? It's not 6 feet by 6 feet. And not only that, a dead body is part of min mitzvah. When they bury somebody, you bury somebody in the talus, right? But you cut off a corner of the talus. Why do you? When they bury a person, we should know of it. But the Chaveh Kadisha cuts off a corner of the talus, that it shouldn't be squared. Why? Because there's an inyan what's called lo yed l'rosh. You're not allowed to make fun of a dead body. Meaning, for instance, to give you an example, if you go to a cemetery, next to the graves, you're not allowed to make a minyan, you're not allowed to daven mincha, shachris. Why? Because in fact, even if you wear tzitzis, you have to tuck your tzitzis in. Why? Because there's a concept of the dead people don't have mitzvahs. The pasuk says, "B'meisim chavshi." Dead people are free from mitzvahs. So when you walk in a cemetery with your tzitzis flying all over the place, or tefillin or whatever, so then you're making fun of them as if to say, you see, we do mitzvahs and you can't. So if a dead person is buried in a talus with four corners, you're basically laughing at them because you see, they're not obligated in... Whose car is this? Whose white car is that? You have to move it. One second. So therefore, what do? They cut a piece of the tzitzis that it's not obligated in tzitzis, and therefore it's not an issue with that. What? Okay, so again, mezuzahs are only when they're upright, not when they're vertical.
If somebody, if so we don't make minions next to a grave to say Kaddish,
No, when you say Tilim, it's not mitzvah. Davening is a mitzvah. Saying Tilim, you're saying Tilim. So then you, by your grave, you say Tilim and you say Kaddish. That's respect for the dead body. But to show any sign of a mitzvah would be forbidden. And therefore they cut, like I said, they cut the corner of the talis. You're not allowed to, whatever, you're not allowed to do any type of mitzvahs in a cemetery. Unless if it's 6 feet away from any grave and you're not, or a separate building that you go into, then you're allowed to do it. Otherwise you wouldn't be allowed to do any mitzvahs. You couldn't put on tefillin, you couldn't daven, so on. Okay, next. If somebody leaves their home, okay, and another Jew is moving into the home. So you finish renting, your rental is up, you're moving out, and the Jew is moving in. So halachically, you have to leave the mezuzahs. You have to leave the mezuzahs. But you can make him pay for them. But sometimes you're allowed to take down the mezuzahs. For instance, if a guy is moving in, then he doesn't need mezuzahs. Or if you're moving out and the building's owned by a guy, so then again you don't need mezuzahs because the building's owned by a guy. What happens if I have very, very expensive mezuzahs, like $200 mezuzahs, and I don't want to leave them? So I'm allowed to change them for kosher, non-expensive mezuzahs as long as they're kosher, and I could exchange them for that, and that's it. But technically, they have to pay for it. Or another case where you're allowed to take down the mezuzah, if you know they're going to be painting the house. Let's say you're moving out, and you know the landlord is going to paint, or the new owner is going to paint, or do construction, then you have to take down the mezuzahs. Why? Because what are they going to do, the workers? They're going to either paint over it, which anyway invalidates the mezuzah, or they're going to rip it off and throw it into the garbage. So therefore the mezuzahs are going to become embarrassed, insulted, so to speak. It's not respect for the mezuzah. So then you're allowed to take it down also.
What about if you sell the building?
You sell a building, if a Jew buys it, then you have to leave the mezuzah, but he has to pay for it.
What about if they paint over it? Is it bad?
Well, the problem with painting over it is not bad, but usually what happens is the paint gets into the parchment itself, and it's going to cover the letter, invalidate it, whatever. It's going to...
pay for the mezuzah, you can cancel this.
Yeah, you can cancel escrow.
What about if he doesn't want to pay?
So then you could take him also, because he has to pay. What do you mean? You know what doesn't want to pay?
But what about the paint? When you do the paint, you're doing over the box, not actually.
Yeah, but I'm saying when you paint a mezuzah, over a mezuzah, paint is liquid. Liquid finds itself, it gets through the case. The case is not seal proof. It goes into the case and it could ruin, it will definitely ruin the mezuzah. Okay, you could change it, we said, for cheaper mezuzah. Okay, next is like this. A person has to be extremely careful in the mitzvah of mezuzah. Even though, we mentioned before, at the beginning, there are certain mitzvahs you have to do, like tefillin you have to wear. Things like that. But there are certain mitzvahs you don't have to keep. Meaning, if I don't want to wear, halachically, if I don't want to wear a four-cornered garment, I don't need to do tzitzis. If I want to live in the street, I don't have to buy a house to put up a mezuzah. There's a mitzvah of shechita, okay? If I don't want to eat meat, I'm a vegetarian. There's no mitzvah that I have to go buy an animal and shecht it in order to be mekayim the mitzvah. There's certain mitzvahs, positive mitzvahs you have to keep, like tefillin, lulav, shofar. It's not optional. You have to keep those mitzvahs. So even though mezuzah seemingly is one of the optional mitzvahs, because I don't have to put up mezuzah. If I have a house, I have to put up mezuzah, otherwise not. So he says, nevertheless, a person should be extremely careful in the concept of mezuzah, because it reminds it that Hashem is protecting the house. The Gemara tells a story. Antoninus sent Rabbi Yehuda Nossi a very, very expensive present. So Rabbi sent him back a mezuzah. So Antoninus said to him, come on, what I sent you and look what you sent to me. I mean, come on. So Rabbi Yehuda Nossi said to him that the concept of a mezuzah is as follows. Normally, the servants, the king is inside, and the guards watch the king. They safeguard the king. Here, Hashem, the mezuzah, Shema Yisrael Hashem, is on the outside, protecting the servants. So he told him a mezuzah is the king protecting the servants. In fact, it's brought down in Svarim that on a mezuzah you have the name Shin Daled Yud, Shin Daled Yud, which is the name of Hashem, also stands for Shomer Dalseis Yisrael. The Hashem guards the doorpost of a Yid. So it says in Halacha even that a mezuzah is actually insurance policy. A mezuzah protects the person not only when they're home, but it says even when they're away from home. If they have kosher mezuzahs on the door, then Hashem protects them.
Go to the houses and still, when they have mezuzah.
You have to check if they're kosher ones, Taka. They might not be kosher. If they're not kosher, it's like you didn't do anything. But the Rebbe spoke once, it's interesting, Sikha, when in the terrorists many years ago killed, the students in that near Tzvas in Malot, where I think it was where they killed X amount of students. So I think it started off like 16 or 17. So the shliach on his own went and checked the school. It was the school, and he found out there's exactly the amount of mezuzahs possible that the kids died. And then there were more kids died. 3 more kids died. I think it was 19 altogether. And the guy went again and checked more, and he found there were a few doors that didn't have mezuzahs that were supposed to. Anyway, it came out that, let's say, there were 19 kids died in Abuch, so there are 19 not kosher mezuzahs. And the Rebbe connected the 2 things together. So it became a big vayitzak, as it said. The Flumma world went crazy. But the Rebbe basically implied what the Rebbe was saying, that because they didn't have a mezuzah, that's why they were killed. Because they didn't have a mezuzah, that's why they were killed. So how do you say such a thing? You don't have a mezuzah, you're chayiv misa? I mean, there is no such halacha. So the Rebbe, the next Rabbeinu, explained it very simply. He says, where's your brains? The Rebbe gave a mashal. When there's a war going on, and the enemy shoots at you, and the bullet hits your head, and you, God forbid, you die. What killed you? The bullet of the terrorist. If you're wearing a helmet, so then you'll be protected from the bullet. So therefore, you're going to say, what killed this person when the terrorist shot him? Because he didn't wear a helmet. So if you don't wear a helmet, you get killed. The helmet protects you. What kills you is the terrorist. But if you have a helmet, it protects you. You don't have a helmet, you're not protected. But that doesn't mean that the helmet is what got you killed. So the Rebbe said the mezuzah is protection. What killed you was the Arab that shot at you, whoever shot at them. He said, if you have a mezuzah, the mezuzah is like wearing a helmet that protects you, but not that the lack of mezuzah killed you.
In the office, do you have mezuzah too?
Yeah, should have it, especially if you eat and drink in the office, then you need one, yes. Okay.